Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're doing an explainer on something absolutely foundational, the incredibly rational and honestly beautifully simple core of Islamic monotheism. We're going to cut through all the heavy jargon, clear up some of those really common misconceptions you might have heard, and just look directly at how Islam views the relationship between us, humanity, and the Creator. And as you'll see, it's a worldview that's deeply logical and actually surprisingly empowering. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The absolute beating heart of this entire worldview is really an invitation. It's an invitation to a completely unfiltered, direct relationship with God. I mean, no intermediaries whatsoever. No priests, no saints, no spiritual gatekeepers standing in the way. Just you and the architect of the universe. Having this direct line is literally the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about today.
Right, so to really grasp this connection, we need to talk about an Arabic term called Tawheed, which basically means the absolute oneness of God. Now, Tawheed isn't just some dusty, theoretical checkbox of belief, It's a super practical, really beautiful alignment of your whole life, where all your ultimate devotion, your reliance, and your deepest hopes are aimed directly at the Creator alone. It's all about having that singular focus. And that brings us to the absolute peak of that focus, which is dua. Dua simply means direct prayer or supplication. And there's a really brilliant logic here. Calling out directly to God is seen as the highest possible form of worship. Why? Well, because it perfectly acknowledges a basic truth. It admits our natural human limitations while simultaneously recognizing God's limitless capability to actually help us. There's actually a very calm, step-by-step logical argument for why these ultimate prayers are kept only for God. Just think about it for a second. To pray to someone or something for supernatural help, you have to believe they can hear everyone, everywhere, all at once, right? And that they have the infinite power to actually change reality. So in this framework, praying to saints or angels or the forces of nature, it just doesn't logically compute. Because at the end of the day, they're creations. They're just as dependent and limited in their own ways as you and I are. Let's move to and see how this builds. You might be sitting there thinking, wait a minute, does this mean I can't ask my buddy to help me move my couch? Absolutely not. Asking a fellow human being for a normal, everyday favor is totally fine, but it relies on three very logical earthly conditions. The person has to be alive, they've got to be present, like actually in the room or on the phone with you, and they have to be physically capable of doing what you're asking. Makes sense, right? It's when we cross those basic earthly boundaries that we run into what's called shirk. Shirk simply means associating partners with God. Basically, it happens when someone asks a creation for something that only the Creator can actually pull off. Think about asking a departed person to forgive your sins, or to give you ultimate salvation. The logic here is super clear. If you do that, you're treating a creation as if it suddenly has the powers of the Creator. Okay, now we really need to address the elephant in the room here, because a huge misunderstanding out there is that Islamic rules around worship and fear and love are somehow overly strict or controlling or just totally stripped of human warmth. People ask, if I have to dedicate everything to God, does that mean I'm not allowed to deeply love my family or be scared of actual danger? Well, let's look at the distinction because it's pretty profound. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. There's a very clear, solid line between natural love and divine love. Natural love, that deep, beautiful affection you feel for your spouse, your kids, your parents, that is 100% normal and highly encouraged. But divine love, that's a whole different level. It's that ultimate, submissive, spiritual devotion. It's the complete yielding of your soul. And that very specific type of absolute devotion, that is reserved strictly for God. The exact same logic applies to fear. Look, if you're being chased by a wild lion, being absolutely terrified is just a normal, healthy survival instinct. Islam definitely doesn't forbid you from running away. But what about that profound moral awe? The feeling that keeps you honest when literally no one else is watching? That deep, private reverence that stops you from doing something wrong in secret? That kind of spiritual awe belongs to the Creator, and the Creator alone. And here's where it gets really interesting. By taking all of that ultimate spiritual fear and divine love and focusing it onto the one God, a massive psychological shift happens. The person actually becomes totally liberated. Think about it. You become fearless of worldly creations. You're suddenly unburdened by the constant judgment of society and free from the exhausting anxiety of trying to please a million different people or forces. You literally only have to please one.
And that liberation leads us straight to Tawakkul,
which means ultimate reliance upon God. Guys, this is an incredibly freeing concept. Tawakkul basically acts as a shield for the human mind, protecting it from that paralyzing anxiety of the unknown. It's this deep-seated, unshakable peace of knowing that once you've done everything you can, the steering wheel of the universe is in the hands of someone who knows exactly what he's doing.
But, and this is a big but, it is not passive. Actually, scratch that, it's the opposite of passive. True reliance is a really beautiful balancing act. Step 1 is always taking practical, worldly action. You still have to study for the exam, go to the doctor, lock your front door at night. Step 2 is placing your ultimate trust in God for the final outcome. It's like taking the medicine, but knowing the actual healing ultimately comes from the Creator, not just the chemicals in the pill. Speaking of healing, Islam is highly proactive about protecting people from superstition. And it does this through ruqya, which just means healing prayers using God's words. You see, instead of letting people fall victim to these mystical healers who might try to exploit a vulnerable person with strange, secret rituals or really expensive charms, Islam actually provides a totally direct, transparent way to seek physical and spiritual healing. So the crucial point here is empowerment. The guidelines for these healing prayers are actually super strict, and they're designed to protect you. The words have to be clear and completely understandable, so absolutely no secret, spooky chanting. You can't believe the person reading the prayer has some sort of magical power because, well, they don't. And honestly, the absolute best person to pray for your healing is you. You don't ever have to be dependent on someone else's spirituality. Which brings us to a really practical real-world application: freedom from amulets. Forbidding things like lucky charms, rabbit's feet, or those blue evil eye pendants. It's really not about being rigid or boring. It's actually about liberating people from irrational fears. It stops you from living in this constant terror that a jealous glance from a coworker is going to ruin your life, or that losing a piece of jewelry is going to curse you with bad luck. I mean, just imagine the constant, lingering anxiety of relying on a fragile little piece of string, or a glass bead, or a specific crystal to protect you from harm. Now contrast that with the immense, totally unshakable peace of relying directly on the all-seeing architect of the universe. It's a complete game changer. It literally shifts your reliance from the powerless right to the all-powerful. Now, a super vital takeaway from this whole framework is understanding the firm boundary between respect and worship. Muslims hold an immense, incredibly deep love and respect for prophets like Jesus, Moses, and Muhammad, and for righteous people throughout history. But they draw a very hard, clear line. They never, ever cross over into worshiping them, praying to them, or asking for blessings from their graves. The worship is kept 100% pure and directed only to God. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it all culminates into such a profound comfort. There's a verse from the Quran that says, "Whoever relies on God, he is sufficient for him." And that just perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding where true inner peace comes from. When you finally stop outsourcing your spiritual security to other people or objects or random superstitions, you find absolute total sufficiency in the Creator. So if there is one actionable insight, one major takeaway for a seeker watching this explainer, it is this: placing your ultimate trust, your absolute deepest love, and your most desperate prayers entirely in the Creator's hands, it isn't restrictive at all. It is literally the ultimate form of spiritual liberation. It completely frees you from the tyranny of the material world. Wow, okay, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today. We looked at the deep, rational logic and the genuinely liberating beauty behind Islamic monotheism. And it all keeps coming back to that one incredibly powerful idea: having an unfiltered, direct line to the divine. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. When you strip away all the intermediaries and all the worldly noise, are you ready to find peace in a direct connection with the one who made you? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep seeking.